Hi, this is Scott, Kilo Sierra 6 Delta Alpha Yankee, and for today's video we're back with yet another Baofeng radio review. I know, 2 in 1 week, interesting. Something you need to know about me and this channel though is I'm not what you would call a radio snob. I have certain brands on the higher end that I happen to like, but I can be extremely critical of those brands for what they are. But you also need to know I dabble at all levels in radio, from the lower end of the spectrum all the way up to the higher end of the spectrum and everything in between. And I tend to go, in terms of production of video, based on what is currently capturing my interest. And right at the moment, I'm looking into some Baofengs. This particular radio, though, this is kind of an important review because it's gonna it's gonna ask some questions. I'm conflicted on this radio. Let me just say that, because what this radio is, this is the Baofeng UV-S9 Plus. And if the literature on Amazon is to be believed, it is allegedly supposed to be the successor to the UV-5R. In fact, they call it the upgrade to the UV-5R. Now, it's true. This does upgrade the design in a number of very important ways. It does miss one pretty critical mark that I'm going to talk about later, and I think that's going to get in the way of this radio becoming the successor to the UV-5R. I don't know if they plan to take the UV-5R off the market, and I don't intend to start that rumor, but I will say this. For years, the UV-5R has been the $27 radio. In fact, they were $25 when I bought my first one. And speaking of buying my first one, anybody getting into ham radio over the past 5 or 10 years or so has often started with something like a UV-5R to start off with. It is called the gateway drug to ham radio for a reason. A lot of people go, well, hell, that's 25 bucks. I'll get it and try it and see if I like it. And oftentimes what people do is they'll buy one of these, and they might buy a couple more different Baofengs just to kind of, play around in that market for a bit before they, finally kind of outgrow the system as it is and then move on to something with a little bit more capability. That's what happened in my case. But I tend to kind of return to the nest every now and again. But as I said, for many years, this has been the $27 radio. Here's an interesting development. This is currently a $27 radio. That's the retail for the UV-S9 Plus. But the Baofeng UV-5R, everywhere you look on Amazon, as of today at least, UV-5Rs are selling for $21. Now, what does that portend? I don't know. I've never seen them on sale like that so consistently across the board. Are they blowing out remaining stock, and then eventually this goes away and this becomes the new $27 radio? Hard to say. But if they do, I think Baofeng may regret that ever so slightly. Because while the S9 Plus is an upgrade in many, many important ways, and I'll go through those in just a moment, there's one particular thing that the UV-5R can do that the S9 cannot do. And I'll touch on that towards the end of the video. And I don't know if that's going to be the deciding factor or not, but I think it's going to be more important than Baofeng counted on. So I'll sort of set this aside for a moment and bring the S9 Plus forward. Now, first thing to understand about the S9 Plus is there are two versions of the S9 Plus. This is called the Tri-Power version. Now, that's a weird misnomer because all Baofengs, or all that I've encountered, are Tri-Power. They have low, medium, and high. That's tri. That's three. There's 3 power levels. So I don't really know what they're talking about, but what they claim is that you, on high, with the Tri-Power version, it'll do 8 watts. I will be doing a separate power and SWR test on this as a follow-up video, and I think you're going to be kind of surprised by the results on that. I know I was. Not more than surprised, actually, shocked. But the second version of this is a tri-band version. Now that's important because that second version will do 2 meter, 70 centimeter, and also 1.25 meter. So that's kind of an interesting development, but that's not what this one is. This is the Tri-Power version. So if you're looking for that 1.25 meter band, that third band, which is a good thing to have, because it's a band that isn't used a heck of a lot, and thus it's kind of wide open in terms of setting up comm plans. that you want to, you know, keep kind of have a little security through obscurity. That's cool. But like I say, for this video, we will be talking about the tri-power version. So how does it compare against the UV-5R? Internally, like most Baofengs, it's the same radio inside. That means you're going to have in this case, a dual band analog, 128 memory channel capable radio. In VHF, it's going to do 136 to 174 megahertz. In UHF, it's going to do 400 to 520 megahertz. Now that's in terms of both receive and transmit. This is yet another radio that I've received very recently that did not need to do any kind of unlocking. This thing came capable of both receiving and transmitting 136 to 174 megahertz, as well as 400 to 520, which of course means in addition to doing the amateur radio bands, this thing will do MERS, it'll do business band, it'll do GMRS. It won't do it legally, but it'll do it nonetheless. So as a radio that if, again, you want to live that outlaw lifestyle and use this for GMRS as well, again, not recommending it per se, but it'll do it. And it'll also do all the other stuff as well. So the menus are the same. The layout is pretty much the same, just cosmetically different. Now, the big difference, of course, between the two, the first major departure, aside from the case design, and we'll talk about that when we do the walk around, is that this one claims that on high it'll do 8 watts. Again, wait for the power test on that one. You'll definitely want to, if you're interested in this radio at all, definitely watch that video. Another important departure is that this not only comes with a charging cradle, but it also comes with a USB charging cable and can charge directly into the battery. Now that is a pretty important departure. The whole thing of charging radios via USB, now sometimes something will come up in the radio industry that I don't get. I look at it and go, yeah, okay, whatever. Apparently, the capability to charge USB is something that has really captured a lot of people's attention. They just love it when people incorporate that into their new designs. Just because I don't get something doesn't mean it's not important to a lot of people. So if that is something that you're interested in, this one will in fact do it. So again, it comes with a charging cradle or USB charging. So, but otherwise, internally, same radios. Same menus, same menu selections. So if you're used to dealing with the UV-5R, you can run a UV-S9 pretty effectively. But for now, let's go ahead and take a look at the major changes here. The first thing, well, I should bring this back. First thing you'll probably note is this radio is a bit taller than the UV-5R, and as a radio pouch manufacturer, I can tell you that while this will fit in your UV-5R pouch, it won't fit well. You need to go up one size, and we do have a radio pouch specifically built for this radio. But yeah, it's a little taller, about the same width. It's a little thinner front to back, not by a lot, but by just a smidge. The case itself, well, I keep moving that out of the way. I should bring this back because this is another interesting little point. While the case is radically upgraded and redesigned, one interesting design feature, and I always like a little bit of artistic license taken with the design, you can sort of see the legacy of the UV-5R coming out in this front panel here. It's not exactly like a UV-5R, but it's reminiscent. It's meant to kind of strike a string of sentimentality with you. I think it's interesting the way they did this. They still have the same VFO memory key. They still have the same A and B band selector. They've just turned them sideways, done a little bit different with that. They've also, the AB band also serves as a LED illuminator. Band button is still in the same spot. All of the keys, the layout is pretty much exactly the same. No major differences or departures there. The PTT button is a little bit different. It's a little smaller, feels a little better actually. Typical Baofeng UV-5R PTT switches feel kind of clunky, but this one feels a little bit more solid. You've got your call button and your Molle button, and they all have the same features. The let's see, the display, of course, at the top, pretty much the same display. Let me get off of this for a second. I don't know why I'm. Oh, I know why I'm set up here. I was doing something with this earlier before I started the test. So, yeah, that was actually from the power test that I did to check this thing out before I started the video. But yeah, we've got kind of the same display size, same illumination package, the same ability to have the orange and the blue and the different flexibility in terms of the colors that are displayed when you're receiving and when you're pressing the PTT. Let's go ahead and turn that off for a second. Now, moving to the side here, we do have a bit of a departure in terms of, oh, well, you know what? I should have started this all the way from the top because this is a bit different. The UV-5R features that kind of exposed LED bulb, whereas this has a bezel over the LED, and it also has a reflector built into the LED. So in terms of which is the better flashlight, this actually is a real flashlight. It's a small flashlight, but it's a real one. It projects a genuine beam, where this is more of kind of an LED that creates a flood effect. This actually does work as far as flashlights go. I don't have much use for a flashlight on a radio, but there are occasions when I have, in fact, used this to illuminate something, you know, searching around for a screw on the floors. It's not something that I definitely would demand that appears on every radio that I buy, but they pop up. On-off volume control at the top, the knob is quite a bit smaller than the one for the UV-5R. It also features no protection, and it's a little taller with kind of a smaller stock on here. I can see how that might be a little bit of a problem in terms of taking a side impact. So, and again, we move back to the side buttons there. We saw that, so let's move back to where we were. So, our speaker mic cover, we've always had this kind of trap door for the UV-5R, and it does take the typical K plug. This one features the pull down. Now, I don't particularly like this particular arrangement, especially if you're running a radio out of a pouch, because when you plug the speaker mic in, it's kind of held out to the side like so. So whenever you're inserting it into a pouch, you have to kind of get it out of the way by pushing it down. Good news is, take a screwdriver and the whole thing comes right off, and it's not even a problem. You can get rid of it completely. That actually is a step forward in the right direction, whereas this one does not come off at all, and you sort of do have to do the same thing of moving it out of the way to fit it into the pouch, and it creates some additional issues at the back of the pouch. So this is definitely an improvement and a step forward. It is, of course, still a K plug. Now, moving to the back of the radio, the belt clip. I've always really hated the belt clip on the UV-5R. These things are flimsy. This pin here is not secured. It's not staked. So even with my fingernail, I can kind of move it over a little bit. I've had these pins actually work out and had these things come completely off. They are extremely easy to break. As far as belt clips go, it is, well, it's the least you can do for a belt clip. I will say that the belt clip for the UV-9 or UV-S9, boy, that name is ponderous, is better. It's more solid. The pin itself is staked. But one little weird side effect is it doesn't open very far. Whereas this one opens a good ways. This one opens not as much. Not a big deal. You only need to open it a little bit anyway to get it onto a belt. So there you go. Now, battery latches. That's kind of a weird asymmetrical thing they did there. I don't know why they did that, but that's odd. Okay, battery latches. Now, I have picked on the UV-5R and the BFF8 HP for a long time over their battery latch design. Not so much on the radio, but as it relates to the actual battery itself. This has always been a weak point, and I've mentioned before I've broken these tabs off. So I caution people when they're inserting the battery to run it forward to its contact point, depress the latch, then slide the battery in and lock it in place. Don't drive that thing in and use the actual tab on the battery to overcome the latch spring. That's what causes the wear on this. It causes it to flex down and eventually break. The UV-S9 has a completely different arrangement in that it has a battery latch on the bottom. So you've got a little tab that you have to pull down. So when you pull that down and out of the way, it just simply slides open. And what we find here is we have a 2200 milliamp battery, not a big battery, especially when we get to that power test and we see how much potential power consumption we're going to be using. So the battery is going to become a problem pretty quickly. Now, in terms of battery life, I haven't done a very effective test on this to see what the life is, but I kind of know how long a 2200 milliamp battery is. But in a radio that's burning out 8 watts or maybe even higher, it's going to go through this battery pretty darn quick. And typically radios that feature a high output also have a high capacity battery. This one does not. There is no, as far as I know, there is no extended capacity battery for this. And this is where I think they're going to have a problem in making this the replacement and successor to the UV-5R. And I'll explain this by telling you this little anecdote. I sell radio pouches for a living. That's one of the products that we offer at Specter Gear. So I kind of have a grasp on which radios are popular based on the pouches that are selling and which particular variant is popular. And we offer 2 variants for the UV-5R. We offer a pouch for the standard capacity battery, so for this layout right here. We also offer a pouch for a battery that is incredibly popular with the people that run UV-5Rs, and that's the let me get that on there right. That's the infamous Extendo battery. This particular battery, and I always forget exactly how much, yeah, this is a 3800 milliamp battery. So that's a substantial upgrade in terms of your battery performance. We sell more pouches for this setup than we do for the stock setup, which tells me that well over half of the people that own Baofeng UV-5Rs and are buying radio pouches, well over half, a lot over half, also are running these extended length batteries. This particular setup, not so much so. So you do not have the ability to upgrade, and in the case of the factory UV-5R battery, this is an 1800 milliamp battery, which is less than 2200 by, well, 400. So it's definitely a must-have upgrade to put this one on here. But because of where they put the battery latch on this, I don't see a way that they can do an extended length battery in the layout such as this. And another thing people happen to like about this extended battery is it makes the battery physically larger, so it's easier to hold as well, because it's a small radio to begin with. And it's just a cool upgrade. Look, it's kind of like, you know, right now we're dealing with a grown-up Lego generation. And you see this when you're looking at things like AR-15s, Glocks, weapon systems that are modular. Anything that's modular that you can fiddle with, mess with, and bolt extra parts on, people like to do that nowadays. So this one here, not so much so. You can't do that. That's going to be a big holdback. But then the trade-off to that is, but it'll do the USB charging. So I guess the question is, will people compromise and maybe just, instead of going with an extended battery, just buy 2 of the extra batteries? Because Baofeng batteries aren't that expensive. So if you think about it, if in your loadout you have 2 extra batteries sitting in a pouch and they're 2200 milliamp batteries, so you've got potentially on tap whatever 2200 times 3 is. I think it's going to be 6600. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see how that math works out in the edit. And then just forego completely the extended battery. Time remains. I just don't know. But the UV-5R is indeed a dated design. It's old looking. It never was an attractive radio to begin with anyway. This radio, on the other hand, is actually a good looking radio. It doesn't feel as substantial or solid as, for instance, a UV-9R Pro. It certainly is not water or rather weather resistant in any way, shape, or form. In fact, this has a couple of openings in the case that actually kind of trouble and concern me a little bit. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn the lights off here, and I'm going to see if I can get this to actually come up so you can see what I'm talking about, because with the lights on you can't see the display at all. So when I turn this on, what I want you to look at is this left side of the display. I don't know if you can see, if the camera can pick up, you can actually see inside. You can see the light coming through obvious gaps and openings in the front here, and I'm hoping that shows up on camera. But yeah, I can see amber light there. I can see amber light there. Not so much on this side. So any kind of water spray, any kind of rain is going to get in through those cracks. So even radios that are not stated to be weather resistant often do have some kind of weather, some kind of gasketing, normally just as a standard design element. But in this case, this is going to let water in pretty easily. Now, if you have a radio mounted in a pouch, you got rainwater coming down. I can see how that rainwater is going to get in right through here. So this is not a radio that I would consider to be a good outdoor radio, just from the outset. Now, the other thing that comes up in my mind is if this is $27, while it's for a $27 radio, it does possess some really interesting features, and it's, aside from the battery design, it's better than the UV-5R in every way. But if you were to save your lunch money up for another 3 days and just throw another $3 or $4 into your radio purchasing budget, why would you not go with the UV-9R Pro? I don't understand it. Now, again, this does bring some party tricks to the occasion. Obviously, the UV-5R Pro is not USB chargeable. There's also one other thing that the UV-S9 does. I alluded to it earlier, and I teased it for the video that I'm going to do for the output power test. But this radio, they say, does 8 watts, right? Well, on VHF, it only does a little bit over 4. Now, people are used to that. Right now, you're going, yeah, okay, I've heard this one before. You know, Baofeng saying it'll do one thing, and it does another. So on UHF, again, remember 8 watts. On UHF, on 441, this thing does 10 watts. It does a legit 10 watts. And on in the GMRS realm, I believe it was something like right at 8 watts or just a little bit below. So on UHF, this thing pumps out. This thing really kicks it. But again, all things being equal, I would rather have a 5-watt radio that's pretty solid in all respects. And you know, again, it would be nice. And there is, by the way, I will say, there is allegedly a high output version of this that I'll probably be bringing in to see, because that may end up being even better than the UV-9R Pro. So I will test that when I get it in. But is that enough to tip the scales in favor of this radio over this one? I still say no, because across the board with the UV-9R Pro, you've got submersible weather protection. You've got a radio that's very, very solid. Has a great feel to it. It performs very well again, at least either, and I said it in the last video, either I have a really good example of this radio, or this is just a really good radio in general. But this, performance-wise, tips more triggers for me than this does. I don't really personally care one way or the other about the USB charging capability. So for me, that's not a deciding factor. So I'll favor this and carry a couple of spare batteries. And in terms of the high output power, I would be lying if I said I didn't wish this thing did do something like 8 watts on high. But I also know that I can get by pretty well, given my local repeaters, at 5 watts all day long. So I don't really need that extra wattage per se. But for some of you, that might be important. So again, it's a real jump ball. But my overall assessment of the UV-S9, and let me get this UV-5R back to its factory configuration here real quick. I will say that the UV-S9 in most, well, it's better than the UV-5R. If I'm comparing just apples to apples here, the UV-S9 is definitely a significant improvement. Again, with the sole exception of not being able to use that extendo battery. But I also, for my purposes at least, I've not had good luck with these extended batteries. This particular extended battery is my 3rd one. This is the only one left that still works. I had one that the tab came off, and I had another one that just completely self-destructed. It's separated right here. this all just fell apart. It didn't fall or anything; it just crumbled, and the battery cells inside fell out. And so, of the three I bought, only one is left, and this one will not hold a charge. If I charge it up, and I can do, for instance, this UV-5R. This is a factory battery. I've charged it twice since I bought it, and it doesn't lose its charge unless I actually run the radio. Whereas this one, if I charge it and just let it sit on a shelf, it will be dead in 3 days. So I don't even know if that's necessarily the issue that I think it is. I know some guys think very highly of these, and it may just be that I bought from a bad batch. Hard to say. But getting back to the UV-S9, the verdict on this one is, hey, if your budget is just $27 or nothing, go for this. Otherwise, save up the money, throw another $3-4 at it, and buy UV-9R Pro. Hey, it's going to be completely up to you. But that's the assessment on the S9. We'll see how it goes. We'll see what the future brings, and we'll see how long that UV-9R continues to survive. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and bring it to a close. Thank you for watching and or listening, and I will be, the next video, obviously, is going to be the power output and SWR test on this radio, and you should see some interesting results there. So this is Scott, Kilo Sierra 6, Delta Alpha Yankee from Southwest Visalia, California. Thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful day.